I cordially welcome you all to the session on innovation and research in higher education at TechBharat 2021. TechBharat is an initiative of Laghu Udyog Bharati, Karnataka and IMS Foundation and is envisioned as a platform to guide, mentor and empower startups and enterprises. A heartfelt thanks to Government of India and Government of Karnataka for their support and encouragement. Higher education is a critical contributor to sustainable livelihoods and economic development of the nation. Higher education aims to serve as a hub for developing ideas and innovations that enlighten individuals and help propel the country forward, socially, culturally, scientifically, technologically, and economically. As India moves towards becoming a true knowledge society and economy, and in view of the forthcoming fourth industrial revolution, where India aims to lead and where an increasing proportion of employment opportunities will consist of skilled jobs of a creative and multidisciplinary nature, more and more young Indians are aspiring for higher education. In order for it to attain these critical end goals, higher education must provide students with a broad-based multidisciplinary education and 21st century skills, while developing specialized knowledge with true disciplinary rigor. It must generate human capacity to build new knowledge and foster innovation. To discuss these aspects and more, we have an eminent panel with us today. Firstly, I would like to welcome Dr. Sudhindra Kaushik, Innovation Director at Volvo. He is also working with universities, startups, entrepreneurs, innovators, and smart technicians. A practitioner with 24 years of international multi-domain experience, Dr. Kaushik has more than 18 national and international patents awarded. He has been awarded with the Karnataka State Innovation Council Award, HCL Excellence Award, India Design Council Good Design 2016 Award, and more. He would be moderating the session as well. A heartfelt thanks to you, Mr. Kaushik, for accepting our invitation, and we welcome you. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Taslim Arif Said, CEO, CCAM. He heads the Discovery to Innovation Accelerator program at CCAM. He's actively involved in promoting innovation in life science and healthcare by supporting translation of discoveries to application, entrepreneurship, and technology development. He also oversees the intellectual property and technology transfer at CCAM. Prior to joining CCAM, he worked as a scientist with University of California, San Francisco, studying neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease. He holds a doctorate in neuroscience from Max Planck Institute for Brain Research, Germany. We're excited to have you here, Dr. Taslim, and welcome you. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome Professor R.S. Veeravalli, Director, PGXPM, Executive MBA, Great Lakes, and the head for the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Great Lakes. He comes with more than 25 years in corporate organizations in senior and top management positions and has done consulting for Hindustan Unilever. He has completed 14 years with Great Lakes, having been associated with it from inception. He has done the Entrepreneurship Educators Certificate program with Stanford University with distinction. He is trained and follows the Harvard Business School way of negotiations, theory, and methods in his teaching and training offerings. We're excited to have you here, Professor, and look forward for your interactions. I'd also like to welcome Dr. Sheelan Mishra, Head, Department of Management Studies, New Horizon College of Engineering, Bangalore. A leader, mentor, coach, and career management advisor, Dr. Sheelan has a keen interest in developing people in the areas of leadership, personal and corporate branding, and entrepreneurship. She is also associated with the National Entrepreneurship Network as an advisor and mentoring budding entrepreneurs. Dr. Sheelan has a rich academic, research, and industry experience of more than 18 years. She has to accredit more than 45 research publications and is also a member of the editorial board of reputed international journals. We thank you for accepting our invitation and we welcome you, Dr. Sheelan.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I now request Dr. Kaushik to take over the session and moderate it. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vishu. First of all, thanks for your time on a Saturday. Like Vishu said, it's precious. I know you're all very busy, but appreciate your time. So welcome from my side, Dr. Taslim, Dr. Veeravalli, and Dr. Sheelan. The topic is quite interesting and something close to perhaps many of us would have been engaged in some form or the other. innovation and research in higher education. I think there wouldn't have been an more apt time to discuss this than we are today. Couple of questions that came to my mind was, is it necessary to discuss this topic? Because that's how usually I start my thought process. Um, if so, how does it matter? There are a lot of discussions going around in the world today. Google is hiring people without graduation certificates. Elon Musk saying, do we really need to go to college? And a huge debate roaring around. Professor Veeravalli would know that better than me. Is MBA required? Is it out of date? Etc. Etc. Employability. Are kids being employable? Recently, I read an IIT batch of half of them not finding jobs. So all these were running through my mind. But then I thought there are more better people who are equipped to guide us through this maze of questions than me. So what I would like to do is to request each of you to start sharing a few thoughts about your view on this perspective, and then maybe I have some question that we can use to maneuver the discussion in the next 45 minutes or so. Maybe we would like to start with Dr. Sheelan on this, and if you can kindly share your thoughts, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Sudhindra sir, for giving me this opportunity to start off the session. Uh, my regards to all of you. It's my pleasure to be in such an esteemed company today for this wonderful session organized by TechBharat 2021, and I wish them a great success in their endeavor. Since I have got the opportunity to start off the session, and being an academician, with little experience in various areas, I would like to start with the various challenges that we are facing, and how is that at the institution level and the government level, uh, we have things coming up to streamline this, right? So India has been such a country which is known for the knowledge that it has added to the world. But yes, over the period of time, things have taken a different type of shape for various reasons, right? So we, as a highly populous country, actually is it's a big challenge in front of us. So I would like to start from that there is no innovation without quality research and development, right? So if we are looking for an innovative country, what is it has to be improved is research and development, right? So a robust ecosystem, a robust research ecosystem is perhaps more important than ever with the kind of changes which are occurring in the world today. If you look at the kind of climate changes which are happening, the population dynamics, be it changes in biotechnology, be it changes in the digital space, the rise of emerging technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, a robust ecosystem of research is more than ever required. So, if as a country we have to lead in these areas, we have to achieve the potential of the vast talent pool that we have. We are blessed with the young generation, the skilled generation, the English speaking generation, right? Who can actually become, who can actually help us becoming a leading society in the coming years and decades. The only thing is that as a nation, we would require a significant expansion of research capability across all the disciplines. So we are facing a lot of societal challenges today, be it the access to clean drinking water, sanitation, the quality education, good healthcare, improved transportation, be it the air quality, the air that we are inhaling. All of us are aware the kind of challenges Delhi is facing right now. Uh, uh, Things on energy, the infrastructure requirement. So there is a lot of scope for we as a country to come out with that system, that structure, which streamlines the availability and quality of all these areas to the common person. So, facing and addressing these challenges will definitely require a very high quality interdisciplinary research across the disciplines that must be done in India, and we do not have to depend on the other countries for this. So if we see, Tejas has been such example, the state of art indigenous made in India, which is well appreciated by the entire world, and we are selling it to the other countries as well. So if that can be done, then why can't we also address these issues, developing our own state of art facility and doing the research which will give us a potential to address all these challenges. Now, something which is alarming, which I want to bring it to the notice, and I'm sure all the esteemed academicians and industrialists will be aware about it, that when we look at what is the spend, government is currently doing on research, it is somewhere about 0.7% of the GDP that we are spending on research, whereas when we compare to the other countries, this number is a slightly bigger number. Like China is spending around 3.8%, United States around 2.8%, Israel, a known country in innovation, 4.3%. So I understand we have challenges, but somewhere this has to slightly go up to ensure that we have those facilities, infrastructure in place. Another challenge that we face at the research level is that when we look at the quantity part of it, we are one of the leading countries in terms of research volume. So if you look at Elsevier's reports of year 2018-19, we are somewhere fifth largest producer of research publications, right? That is what I'm talking about, the quantity part of it. But when we look at the quality part of it, somewhere there is a challenge. When we look at what kind of international collaborations are taking place in research, we are slightly lagging behind. What kind, number of citations we have, we are slightly lagging behind. So I think it all starts with the collaboration. Since international collaborations are slightly lesser in numbers, that leads to a lot of other challenges that we face in the research area. So the time has come, and this is the best time where we need to catalyze the quality academic research. And all of us are aware the introduction of new education policy, which has been recently introduced, and it has a framework available which talks about streamlining this entire structure, right? So our national education policy, which envisions a very comprehensive approach to transforming the quality education and quantity of research in India, this definitely would require a big shift. We have to promote research to those grass level institutes. Maybe saying is easier than doing, but this definitely needs an action big time. Now, to I would also like to mention here uh, that there is a need of few steps, right? The research challenges include a way forward to, number one, how to increase the citations and international collaborations. How is that we improve the quality of PhD degrees and the papers published during PhD process, dealing with the predatory publishing, which I think as a country somewhere we are leading, and actually is creating a very wrong impression about the quality of research that is getting organized in India, right? And we definitely need to take care of the increasing funding towards the research. So one major aspect which I would like to mention here is that government, industry, academia partnerships are required to take a major leap in improving the research. Research is happening, but at a very individual basis. Research is happening, but when it is sponsored by various organizations like AICT, DST, UGC, and so on. So there is a need for us to take that collaborative approach. There is a need for us to work on the collective intelligence, which would help us to come out with, number one, a quality research, two, the problems, the common problems that are existing, around us in our society. One example that I would like to quote here is that AICT has introduced something a very good scheme, which is called as Margdarshak scheme, which is like one of the institution which is delivering a quality education becomes a mentor to the near around institutions in the state or to the other states as well, to guide them on various frameworks of quality education, to enhance their teaching learning processes and research as well. So can we have similar framework coming up in the area of research as well, so that This introduces a concept of collective learning and collaboration. Outstanding research is a core requisite for outstanding education and development. If we as teachers can work on quality research with the support of government, industry, academia, I'm sure automatically the quality input will also go to the classes. I can say the more quality input will also go to the classes and will definitely help us transforming the younger minds whom we are looking forward to take our country to the next level. So I believe it all starts with the intent. So if the government, industry, till the education institutions and the researchers align the intent towards improving the quality of research, it can surely happen. So I would like to conclude with that knowledge creation and research are critical in growing and sustaining a large and vibrant economy, uplifting a society, and continuously inspiring a nation to achieve the greater heights. And that's what, as a country, we should be looking forward to.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, India has been known to the world as the knowledge provider, and I think the concluding remarks of that knowledge creation, as research, good research always says, it's about adding to the body of knowledge. Makes sense completely. Thank you. Can I ask Professor Veeravalli to share your thoughts, please?
Yeah. Greetings, all of you. It's uh, it's heartwarming to participate in this session, most for the topic, and I think education. In fact, the theme of the conference itself is most endearing because it is addressing rightly health and education as the two foundational pillars for social value and social asset creation, which is the foundation on which economic activities are possible via employability as the linking thing. So I think it cannot be more emphasized that we are looking at the foundational elements of this. So with that, I'd like to share my opening thoughts with the benefit of a set of slides because we are on a digital mode. I thought it will possibly help me as much as the others to, kind of have our thoughts together on the same points. So please allow me to open my presentation. So I'm going to focus on the words innovation and in management education. Basically, that is also my area of interest. One of the area of my research interest has been in management education, among other things, and particularly about the knowledge to capability transformation part, because I think knowledge is easily enough understood. Knowledge transfer is also easily practiced or more easily practiced, but from there on to translate to know-how is also doable in the classroom. But I think we truly run into difficulties, and I can say it with conviction, having been a corporate guy for 25 years, having to receive and exploit it on this from the other side first, which also I should say was a kind of a trigger to pick my curiosity to look at the academic side, and I had some opportunities while I was serving. It was especially in management that transformational elements from knowledge and know-how into capability and competence. So that as an opening statement. Therefore, when among the topics offered by Vishu, I was quickly, in fact, he offered me another title. I thought I'll kind of do better justice to this. So basically, I'm going to first look at the context and the foundation and the question. These are the things I thought I will set out in this opening remarks. So basically, all learning is centered on thinking and questioning. I am a confirmed votary, and this is the only pedagogy that I follow. I can't think. I have enormous admiration for this gentleman, it quickly boils down to how do you make the students think. And from time immemorial, all learning activities have been through questions of various kinds, right? From the gentle puzzles to the riddles to the koans, followed by very thick sticks by these Zen masters who would kind of not hesitate to crack you on your head. So the whole thing has been about making the student at the center and thinking through not nicely packaged ways, but in confronting the unknown without boundaries or prepositions. So attributed to Gautam Buddha, this is another quote which is very close to my heart. I think ultimately there are only right questions. And higher education, definitionally to my mind, is about learning to come up with the right questions as opposed to coming at the right answers. Because as we know by now, that if the question is right, then the answer is embedded or implemented there, and the clues are very much there for you to develop. So therefore, I asked, what are the questions we must ask for management education innovations, right? So as we know by now, all innovations are begotten by disruption, or innovation is actually an event by nature disruptive. So fundamentally, we also know that disruptions start from looking for the pains or the needs and the aspirations, and for gaps therein, and then set out to disrupt them by leveraging what we can and know and could configure in order to kind of develop solutions. So what does learning constitute in management is the question I'd like to ask. And I start off by this disclaimer. I have come to realize again very, very clearly that management is not a science alone. And it was not as if that I figured this out. Another person whom I greatly admire, Henry Mintzberg, said this very presciently, and he said that fundamentally management is a practice where the art, the science, and the crafts meet. I again consider this to be a very powerful core statement or thought from which an entire body of research can be gainfully drawn and developed for management especially. So if it is true, the question follows, can it be taught only in the classrooms? Here you could see that it is about questioning status quo in terms of models and approaches and things like that as well. And I'm basically saying, or rather nudging, if not pushing the boundaries and the frameworks. So where are the gaps in this whole thing in management is the next question that I'd like to ask. So is it in the science of the management education? Is it in the art component of that? Is it in the craft component of that? And how much, especially of the arts and crafts, are dealt with in management if management is fundamentally a social discipline, right? Which in itself is not very clearly set out in many of the B schools themselves, due to a variety of reasons, right? In the way in which you frame the whole thing sets the reality as we know. And I'm afraid that it is a social science or social discipline itself is blurred, actually diffused, and probably not even consciously kept in the back of the mind very often. So the questions are, I would start with as fundamentally as asking what is art and what is craft, and therefore how do we apply them to the management? How do they translate to practices? And what are the science elements in the practice? What are the art elements in it? What are the crafts elements in that? And how do they combine all of these to manifest a manager as an acting, thinking, and effective performing human being? And if you were to, unbundle or decipher a manager as a bundle of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behavior, how do all these things integrate from or flow from these previous questions into that as an outcome? What are the frameworks that are legitimate? What are the processes of acquiring all of these and developing them, and how to actually make them part of you and remain with you and become you and be you, or all the other questions that come up. So to me, the whole management is a binary thing. It basically has one half of it linked to thinking, leading to functionalities, leading to success as the endeavor, and that is the science part of it. or a cognitive part of it, to my mind. Then there is this whole lot of feelings and emotions and the resultant perceptions and the sense of aesthetics, which is as you will look up the root of this word, will quickly tell you that it actually arises out of the root of this word is a sense of order. That is where aesthetics come from, and I would probably dare to define aesthetics as exquisite order, right? From there on, the sense of beauty is born because of space and other kind of arrangements which are so exquisite and so dynamic that it wows you literally, and then it leads on to feelings. And therefore, there is this, the affective side of therefore the human beings, and then eventually leading to happiness. So therefore, I find that the intended purpose of all learning must be balanced between success and happiness, and the art and the craft, art comes in over that. And as you can decide from the logo on the right hand side, to my mind, Steve Jobs sensed or felt or figured it out most emphatically and created a global demonstration of the fine combination of the functionalities and aesthetics in order to run away from the competition and become a global success. And I think it goes beyond just an individual thing to a philosophy for us to look very closely at. So therefore, the matrix is between success and happiness. And if we quiz human beings, very quickly, they would not be happy, even if happiness is given without success. And ultimately, they would say they want both. And most of them, self-centered, will stop with this matrix. But I think for universal franchise, you need to ask whether it is enough if it is applicable to you alone versus to all. Therefore, to me, this is the kind of a formula or a mantra in terms of the end outcome of all education and learning, especially higher learning and management learning, because it is a discipline which has the power and potential to impact the entire humanity, right? Because today it is already a fact that corporations are larger than countries in terms of GDP size, their powers and influences, and their social impact. So it goes without saying, it's in fact a no-brainer to say that it has to be seen as a universal franchise functionality or discipline. So I think what really dazzles me is that this gentleman figured this whole thing out in 1950 or 1960, a full 70 years ago, when he said the management purpose encompasses creating products and services which are appropriate for the society, which alone will lead to value surplus translated to profit and wealth. The management must go beyond that to provide employment and livelihood, give businesses to the others to kind of flourish the society economically, revenue to the government, and be a supporter of community. And therefore, it all boils down to it being a triple bottom line as the capability to come out of management education, far beyond adding shareholders' wealth quarter on quarter, right? These things have been spoken enough, but not emphatically enough, not impatiently enough, and not with sufficient, what shall I say, imperatively enough, so to say, because agencies have not been potent enough to enforce this larger framework as yet in the way in which transactional systems are set up, right? The economic power and the shareholding powers and the market forces are far too powerful, and that comes at a cost on the happiness side or the universal franchise side, right? So here is Henry Mensberg. He beautifully said that when you boil it down, art is for vision, creative insights, and science is for analysis, structures, and processes in management. The craft is for looking at the whole, learning of the whole thing. Crafting is basically, to my mind, the ability to synthesize products which have both functionality and aesthetics, as we spoke of earlier, and be able to do them at an excellent level, a level of excellence. So to me, a craft manager is basically a craftsman, and the whole thing is made able by not just sitting in the classroom and cognitively receiving things, or even vicariously experiencing or feeling them in the classroom effectively, but by being able to practice all of that to convert that into transform yourself or his self or herself into a new human being by appropriate methods and tools and techniques which are most efficient and productive. So therefore, Harvard rightly came up with this cash model, which is intuitively very obvious, but I think as a combination quite effectively and powerful. And what really concerns me at the end of it is that how little is it embedded in the education system. And it runs like this. As we know, first is from ignorance to knowledge. From there, counterintuitively, the model says before you jump to skills from knowledge, do look at the modification that occurs in the attitudes, because with every new piece of knowledge, you are a different person in terms of your awareness, and that rightly, but very intuitively and subtly says that you become a different person in your outlook, in your attitudes. And then from there, the skills arise as a combination of these things in practice and ability to perform. And this is the key point that the cash model kind of figured out, that all management education or all practice education must be aimed at in creating irreversible habits in the learners. So to me, one very interesting and important investigation area would be the effectiveness and the capability of all educational systems in management as to their vouchsafing habit formation. And it's obvious that if you look at this the whole thing at a matrix, people get hired for the left-hand side, but they get fired for the right-hand side, as I jokingly say in my classrooms. And the reasons are not far to seek. The left side is taught. The right side is left to be fended for itself, with, I think, this education system itself not being consciously aware of this pitfall in what they produce and then give as products to the society. Right? I'm obviously using inflammatory language at the risk of it being contestable, and that is the very purpose of this whole way of speaking as well. And the key final point that management education must actually exploit is that the whole thing comes through, the transformation happens through apprenticeship. And this is the other empirical question you can ask in your research on the education quality or education models, as to how much of apprenticeship is happening in link or in sync with creation and vouchsafing of the habit formation. And this, I think, is one of the big tickets that are still missing, right? So the questions continue then to the next level. We say, what are the, if these are understood now, and that means that a management student is in for a transformational journey, what is the transformation pathway? Can we actually articulate one, right? Starting from the ignorance of the ignorance in the Johari window, all the way up to the mastery. And what would be their milestones, indicators, and metrics? And number two, what are the ecosystem of stakeholders in place for management learning to happen, for it to be complete, to reaching not just a habit, but to reach levels of adequacy to ability to mastery, right? So my offering is this. This again is intuitive, intuitively obvious. Over a time scale and expertise level, you start at the ignorance of ignorance, and then when you become aware of your ignorance, you're a novice, and then from there you become an apprentice under appropriate learning systems. And then there is this invisible but well-known habit and ability formation threshold, after which you are on the scale of ability, and that depending on how far and how high you want to go by paying the most valuable resource of yourself, your lifetime, you can pursue all the way up to mastery. And I always joke in the class saying that you guys are called to be students of masters of management, MBA or something. So do you really want mastery? So that another question I think it would be well worth asking. And of course, you have these terms now and levels now to calibrate, right? So how much of the context is there and how much of the practice there? This is my last slide coming up. And this is the schematic by which, for instance, my executive MBA class, which the leadership class runs, right? It integrates the stakeholders. The whole thing starts with the business outlook. And my student is a high potential and high fast track talent over there. And his or her talent has to be actually maximized. So there is a career plan to align the individual's motivation and alignment to association to the organization, and a development plan results. And he or she enrolls into my executive MBA. and then comes to learn in the classroom, and then needs to have this ecosystem which should be active and running and effectively helping this individual to internalize the learning by practice and apprenticeship, with importantly a top management acknowledgement in order to create the right priorities and signaling, the boss to be aligned but not come in the way of the development, because we don't think the boss can be burdened with this developmental thing, but that should be given to a coach. HR there and the Great Lakes faculty or any faculty or educational system must be invested stakeholders. And then the individual pulls it in adult education, and then it must be cemented by a very large project which aligns the career progression and the business outlook, strategic outlook, and the individual's learning. I just wanted to give some frameworks like this in order to provoke the mind of the audience to think further and to discuss further if it leads to anything. And I close this opening remarks with these questions. In management education, how far are art, craft, practice, transformation, and happinesses are integrated? I stop here, and I hope this has been not irrelevant to the overall conversations to follow. Thank you very much.
Not at all. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think the cash model sort of summarized what is going on, and on the other side, what should go on. That brings us nicely to Dr. Tasleem, who has had the benefit of seeing the other side of the world, both in times of seeing education, being part of the industry academia collaboration, and coming back here to India and doing similar things, engaging with sometimes. I'm pretty sure you would have had times where I said, "Why am I sitting here today? I'm getting nothing worth of my time." So, Tasleem, over to you and your thoughts on, and as candid as you can be on this topic, please.
No, not at all. Thank you. Thank you so much, SK. And very, very interesting to hear from previous speakers both. And of course, delighted to be on this event. I just was thinking what more one could add, both from a perspective of Dr. Mishra clearly mentioned about the knowledge at the center of many aspects in terms of building long-term strategy and the importance of it. And I think Professor clearly articulated very well the structure and the strategy that over time people have assessed and built models around it, and what are the important components about it. If I may, just to possibly just to bring the diversity of thought on the table, uh, I was just looking at the topic, and one of the component in terms of research, uh, uh, which is possibly a means to build knowledge in a way, according to me, and build more and more knowledge, something that you didn't have, you do research and you build it. I think research, as you rightly said, has to be at the forefront of education, because when you educate, your curiosity should be at the same time. Learning and curiosity should be beginning, together. Why you learn processes, why you learn something as we have, your curiosity should be able to say how does one learn about it? Can you also possibly add to that, the body of work, as one would say? And one thing that possibly we are seeing is that currently in higher educations, not there, as I think Dr. Mishra said, that we did have phenomenal universities who contributed to the world knowledge. But if you go back and just look at today's numbers, possibly we are not there. And I think we should accept it. And while we possibly are getting better than possibly 20, 30, 40 years ago, but we should accept and say that, okay, so what is that is going on? So one possible thing is that this higher educational uh, I think, capabilities and the institutions have possibly been much more towards educating than bringing the new mindset of the research, to be honest. And why is it so? Is it more because of the education is meant to ensure that the person is ready for a profession, or rather the person is actually now knowledgeable? That's two different components to it. And I think this is where the fine line is happening. The immense pressure in terms of an education for your living, making your living is a very direct term that has happened. And education, in higher education at least, it hasn't actually left out as something that one wants to do to add to their capabilities. And I think this is something has to be brought back in some manner. And we must focus on it more, and we must have centers and universities which actually want to do that, against producing another big lots who are 100% employed as soon as they come out of the batches. Nothing wrong in doing that, but possibly you are what we are adding to the larger system is batch which works and not batch which actually brought the knowledge to society. And that is diluting our overall knowledge as a community. I don't think we are assessing a damage, but it is happening as we speak. I think you can imagine the general ability to build an intellectual dialogue is actually going down, and this is really hurting, because if you don't have those dialogues, you're not going to learn. The rationality is losing. Whatever somebody says, people are believing. There's nothing actually broadly, and this has to change, and this can only change when you learn, you have your own thought process, your curiosity is there, and then you reflect back on things, you add to people the empathy, the support system, all comes when you actually do more, and you're not learning just so that you can get a job or you do something. So there is something there. Can that be helped? I'm just trying out while I possibly said these are the issues. Can that be helped? It can very much be helped. I'm seeing a couple of examples in North where new uh, humanities oriented universities are coming into place, which are heavily supported by the possibly the philanthropic angles. And those are clearly taking a role, saying that we do not want to possibly just have this component being taught more because this is where it will happen, but we want to have a larger cross-disciplinary dialogues. At the same time, I just wanted to bring one, and possibly I'll close here. Another important thing which has happened in higher educational institutions or universities, the research component has actually come down, definitely. Those higher education institutes were the pillars for hundreds of years, or possibly last few years, last decades too, of research. But what happened, there was a shift in possibly late 70s, early 80s to build something what would call it as a research institutes at the central level. Now, what has happened? Now, a lot of research component has gone to that. So you have a main support from the public funding component, which was coming to universities, which were either central universities, state level universities, any big university, is actually moved to research institutes. And this institutes, and then these universities are now left largely to do that. I'll give you a couple of examples which are really doing well. Many universities were doing phenomenal science, even in biological sciences, possibly are not at the same level compared to 20 years. And that is largely because suddenly the government shift happened that research institutes would do the work, which is not purely a large educational. They do PhDs, but not otherwise at the master's levels or undergrad level. Universities where you do the undergrad, grad, and PhD level or postgrad and the PhD level component. So now the environment, research institute doesn't have environment of undergrads and so on. So this is another thing has happened, and that's where ICERS, if you talk about, is a really a good answer to that problem that actually happened. You have undergrad, postgrad, and PhD in the same environment. So you have a research component built into that. So I think these are a few things that have happened. There cannot be a one factor which is happening, but I think we can't shy away from the fact that there is a diminishing returns in terms of the larger research component missing, something we all have to talk about and respond to it, and then possibly build more towards that. We have capabilities, we have seen capabilities, but I think if there is a small piece which is going wrong, we have to address it and come back to that. So I hope I added something to discuss further, SK, on this.
Sure,
And
sure, Taslim. I think it makes sense. I run well, let me put it this way, a session called Research 4.0. So basically, that touches upon the fact that while the industry is moving to 4.0, what is the answer from the research side, whatever that could be. So there has to be a response to match and lockstep in that journey. Otherwise, we can very well visualize one leg moving away from the other. And I firmly believe that they cannot not work together any longer. But at the same time, I also feel that. Earlier, in a joking way, that earlier we used to have theses which used to dust in the library. With the digital copies, even that is not possible today, right? It is hitting in some hard disk somewhere, which nobody even knows that it exists. So this is a kind of like you to summarize, Taslim. I think there has to be an answer where the intellectual discussion, which is actually not happening. I fully support that, because maybe a very orthogonal point to that is, if you look at how media influences people, it's like never before. Now, one of the things I link to that is, people look up to celebrities, right, as role models. And when these role models, I don't want to name them, um, when they talk about or undermine having an intellectual discussion, they take pride in saying that I got zero in maths. I mean, how are you going to put that in a society which is going to grow in STEM or management? Because science is, even for their own investment, they would have done all their math. It is just they put the wrong message across for the young guys to pick up. So in this context, there is a new discussion. My first question coming up is, there is this new discussion, and I'm not as educated as you in this topic, about what is this collaboration with foreign universities being opened up. Is that going to do any good at all? Maybe I'll start with you, Taslim. Is this international collaboration is going to do anything to help the problem that you laid out?
I, I think collaborations are usually, are good. According, I am a very pro for collaborations, to be honest. And I think if you step back, when India after independence set up most of its management or technology institutes, they were all connected through collaborations. We actually sought after a few specific geographies which were doing well, and each institute were then connected with those, and that was because of collaboration. We learned a lot with them. They contributed to our early stage learning, and that is actually absolutely good. uh, Now, if we were to collaborate more, like in our scientific environment, we collaborate on a daily basis with international institutes. And this is like a really, really important. And now, when you talk about it, so in general, I would say absolutely a good idea. We should do it more. Not that I am not aware of a dedicated effort for that. But I am also at the same time aware that when international collaborations come here, they are coming because of reasons which possibly are towards market, which possibly are towards their next 50 years of growth, which possibly are many others. And one has to assess that aspects when one looks at it. But in general, I think whenever we have collaborated outside, and we have collaborations at Cambridge, we have collaborations in Boston, we have collaborated in Frankfurt, and so on. Those have been largely very, very productive collaborations, because it's always learning. I hope we are also adding the value to them as we do the collaboration. I'm absolutely pro collaboration in that.
Yeah, I think the last line underlines the essence is, are we bringing something to the table as well? Uh, uh, and going to Dr. Mishra, is there something around STEM that you think? Because I use the same point that you mentioned earlier, that the citations is a good indicator of how much we are adding to the value or how much we are bringing to the table. I think that's not a great indicator today as yet. So, what do you see as the possibility? Is there more to gain? And can we even be at the table, like Taslim said, from an international collaboration perspective, maybe from STEM perspective, and then I go to Dr. Professor Veeravalli for the management perspective. Dr. Mishra first.
Yes, Professor. So I will start from the collaboration part where Mr. Taslim has left it. So definitely collaborations are the way forward. I think that is how, the collaborative learning happens, and that's a world, aiming at. Let's take India's example itself. When we were a closed economy, and what are the challenges that we were going through, and it came to a point that where we didn't have a choice but to let our economy open and see the transformation that has happened from then till now, right? So we have been progressing, and there are challenges because of various reasons, but what is that has helped us? Collaboration in terms of foreign companies coming to India, investing in India. We getting into more of global economic concept, learning how things are happening globally and bringing those products or facilities to India. So there is a lot of learning which has happened because of this. So let me talk now about the institution level. How we, let's say, I represent New Horizon College of Engineering, and I represent a gamut of so many other engineering and management institutes today. How is it we can increase this learning? It is happening only through collaboration. Today, we have multiple centers of excellence in the campus, right? And these are all established by the industries. And these centers of excellence, that knowledge is getting into the curriculum is getting delivered to the students are learning, building skills, getting trained on those new technologies. But how it is happening? Collaboration is the way forward, right? So similarly, when I say that we have collaboration with IIM Bangalore, we have collaboration with the Harvard Business School online. It's about having access to the knowledge, having access to the global level knowledge, right? So I think this is something, be it management education, be it science and technology, this is a way forward.
Okay.
And if we talk about innovation, I go back to research and development, and I go back to collaboration, and then I go back to that this is how we are going to improve the quality by having access to the world class research.
Right. Thank you. Before Professor takes up, I'll slightly modify the question. The collaboration between industry and academia is perhaps discussed to death, and it will not subside anytime sooner. Um, you had the executive MBA program, and that typically means that it's for people who are experienced in the industry for some years, and hence a top up in education would be handy. One question, part A, is it doing any good from the collaboration of industry academia perspective, and what do you foresee as the value that industry gets in terms of a research component of the program, if any? If you can elaborate on that, please.
Uh, um, before uh, um, before answering that question, if you would permit me to answer or give some thoughts on the original question.
Sure.
I would want to add these 2 points. One, in addition to all the good reasons for the collaboration, the one other important thing to my mind is the standard that they set and the accountability that they naturally put in place or enforce. I think that is one of the important things. I would paraphrase it like this by asking what is the quality of the PhDs that are created in tens of thousands every month, leave alone year here. So the gratuitous granting of qualification. So I would want to shift the question to the meta level of the rigor and what are the mechanisms that are macro, not individual institution centered, which is therefore a small drop of excellence amidst some. So I think there's a need for having to connect the dots for it to become mainstream. And those require payoffs to be aligned, because I think the payoffs is the elephant in the drawing room. When you don't align compensations for the metric, it is never going to see the light of the day. If it's a PhD is a ticket for somebody to become an assistant professor, it's a self-serving thing, and then endemic corruption, etc. Will the tendency to corrupt will be endemic, so to say. Let me put it that way. So I think international collaboration sets some reference levels for our own self-respect and standards, and thereafter push us into the affirmative side of things, and then it grows, right? So that's what I want to say. And Great Lakes has been a school like that. It started with international collaboration, continues to be centered at international benchmarked curricula, and actively create collaborations on the various programs, do exchanges, etc. So I think we are able to see all of them becoming manifest in that sense. So to come back to the industry's question, I would want to start up by saying that the executive MBA as a product in India is stillborn. So, and I also, by the same token, say that it is a treasure to be waiting to be tapped. I'm speaking for MBAs, and I don't think it is wrong to say that it is possibly so for others also, because there is a burgeoning. I would say, if you were to kind of ask me to do a back of the envelope calculation of the market size, I would hazard a guess, at least at the greenfield level, as is today now as a virgin territory, it's as large as the full-time program. So in Great Lakes, we are very clear that executive MBA is a huge, not only a huge opportunity, but a huge responsibility that we need to open up, right? So when you do that, and that is also due to another peculiar reason. India is preponderant in engineers as undergrads, and then they could get entry-level jobs, and then they grow up, and then they are also out there. So to therefore address that, I think the executive MBA needs to mainstream, number one. That requires threshold-based, events to happen for volumes to build up, to be kind of promoted. It has to, somebody will have to be, the first movers will have to spend for the category creation. That is another challenge, right? It's a bit of a chicken and egg. No individual has got deep enough pockets unless he is a philanthropic kind of or a large guy moving into the sector with a deep pocket, right? So there is a mismatch between intent awareness and the affordability to create segment. But if we do those things, and assuming that these elements are fixed and use cross thresholds, then the executive MBA will definitely become a platform for more and more of the mid-level people coming to educate themselves, and then are available as a network for the education institutions to further tap. And I've seen in the last 15 years of guiding this program, every one of these students is at the highest level of learning integrity. They know, they have an acute sense of awareness of what is the value of their time when they're doing an MBA program with me, and they bring real industry challenges that they and their ecosystems are facing, which are being solved in the form of projects and things like that. What is remaining to happen is to lead them to deeper research engagement, both of a fundamental nature and applied nature, and for those relationships and contracts to spring up. Today, I would suspect that it is a below threshold phenomenon. I think that requires everybody to pull together. That's
Yeah,
how I would do it.
I think you made a very interesting point there also, is which I would paraphrase saying, what is measured gets done is one of the tenets of management control system. So I think, what are we measuring in terms of research? Taslim, you talked about content being uh, it is worthy, and in other words, Dr. Mishra talked about how much is it cited. And I think the essence still remains, is it somebody doing for a promotion, or is somebody is doing it for, I mean, in my own case, I had no idea or premonition of doing a PhD, but somebody said, what the work you have done is already good enough to be given a PhD, so why don't you just submit the work you have done? So something like that would be nice to have often rather than by exception. So is there something that we can stimulate within the industry that can bring them naturally in a win-win? I think people tend to see this as a zero-sum game, which makes it a problem, that your gain is my loss or my gain is your loss. So I think somewhere that has to be broken up. So what could be that measure, that method to bring this, to make this into a win-win? Because sometimes people, take pride that they dropped out of college, but that's by itself is not a metric, right? So what did you do something which was better than spending time at a university or at a company? uh, I joke also in the industry circle that a job is more like a EMI payment system, right? So you're hooked to your job because of your EMIs that you got to pay. So to bring them into that intellectual orbit, We have about 6 minutes to go. So what would be the kind of closing remarks on this topic of what would make these people come together, which could stay longer than we have seen? What could be that metric or that piece of carrot? Anybody could start.
I'm happy to go first. Very quickly, I think tough one, but a wish list. Uh, quick. First of all, I think the to come together. I think very importantly, more and more trust needs to have. But I'll not go philosophically back into that. Let's look at the action points rather than this. But building trust is a very important component in doing any collaboration, and that's key. When you think that the other one is there to take something away from you, is not going to help anyone.
No, sorry to interrupt, but I fully agree. From an industry perspective, I totally endorse it. Continue, please. Thank you.
Correct. So just to do, I think in terms of at least from a broader biological science perspective, I think there should be across academia, industry sabbatical opportunities, which are not there. Very important because I think this allows people to spend time and give the change of the language of same science that you're doing exactly the same experiment, but the two different languages you're speaking when you talk to your coordinates. That's one. Second opportunity, people do not have joint PhD programs. Many Indian industry still haven't been able to do that. Not, it's not their fault, but I think joint PhD programs are very important thing. The third important component is that the large research programs which are done together. What we are seeing is that I think this would allow more engagement, and very important thing that I think we need is that the ability for academician to actually able to say that this is towards industry and I'm doing it for industry. if you if that is a taboo, spoken unspoken taboo on it, it's not going to work out. I think it's very important. We have to celebrate somebody making success and possibly getting reward for that, then saying that no, you are supposed not to do in that regard. So there are different components to it, and each can be addressed by making a model for it. You give a reward, you give a celebration, you give award, and makes it this is now accepted, this is celebrated, and do that more. So people actually go towards it. And these are possibilities. Hopefully, it would happen.
No, I like all of them. I think it makes sense so that it's more natural for people to be in it. And especially a joint one and a sabbatical one. I think I like the new labor reforms would allow 4-day working week. I think these are the moments of change that will change the course of the future. Thank you, Taslim. Professor, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think in my view, there are two points I want to say. One is to do with research, one is to do with higher education itself. I think the current formats of the ways in which the programs are offered, they are locked into these postgraduate, university bound, rule bound, etc. Already, undergrad students, both my sons, for example, while they got admission for masters, they said they're both working for American multinationals. They're learning every night. And then they are saying that this is what matters. And elder guy is passed out of BITS Pilani, and then he's 6 years going, is still with Qualcomm and happily. Second guy is likewise with PayPal and says so. And I can see them burning the midnight oil, learning things, in fact. The last 3 hours, they are into actually YouTubes and other things and other Coursera, etc. So I think there is a innovation that needs to be done in the productizing, number one. Coming to the research, I think the research models and what goes for accepted research to result in a PhD needs overhauling. Right now, we are still actually locked into the older models of empirical, etc. Gather data and then show me the statistical squiggles to say decide the fate of that entire 7 years being burned. I think these are all extremely expensive. So I think the outcome-based, more applied, tolerant research models themselves are the order of the day. And this requires thinking at the high level, top down, rather than from bottoms up. The industry cannot by themselves prescribe other than saying that this is useless to me and this is useful to me. To that extent, they can act as catalysts as well as the regulators by showing value to it. But I think there is a need for having to, complement from the academic side of it in seeing this. And that requires some mediation, some policy level intervention where they have sufficient reach. So I think these are all some of the things I see which are endemically right now, festering and then keeping us like, crabs inside the bottle, not being able to come out, not knowing who is at fault.
Yeah, yeah. I can fully agree to that. I think shaking off certain things, and I think the change in the models, you said it so well, that makes a huge difference, because the way I summarize that old model sometimes is operation success, patient died.
Yeah.
So what is the actual outcome of the whole thing? Thank you so much, Professor. So we come from where we started to Dr. Mishra.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me the opportunity. And my view on this is that there's a lot of synergy which is required to build in the system. Now, if you look at the initiatives, there are a lot of initiatives happening at different levels. So, for example, NASCOM has come out with the Future Skills Prime initiative, where they are tying up with the colleges, and a lot of free courses are available. The industry-oriented free courses are available for students to further build on their skills, at least to start with. Similarly, if you look at AICT, in last few years, the kind of initiatives AICT has taken, the way they have got in touch with the institution, the close relationship that they have built, I think there are a lot of things which are happening already. Now, the question is, how do we synergize all the efforts that we achieve the goal of quality research and making our economy or making our nation more innovative? So I think a system is required. Now, when we look into our new education policy 2020, they have come out with a national research framework, okay, which will be like a licensing agency among the research institutions, the education institutions, including the industry. I think if there we are able to set the things right and build the synergy we are expecting, things can start streamlining. So one is synergy. The second part, as if you see the way government enforced CSR, a budget to be spent in the CSR activities. I think the time has come to similarly enforce, few policies related to it, where industry, definitely they're doing a lot. I'm not denying it, but I think a little more push is required for industry to collaborate with the education institutions, vice versa, and bring that latest to the table. And I think that would be a hallmark change. And this should not be limited to only few institutions, the famous institutions or the quality institution in the country. This benefit should go across the levels. So instead of saying only CSR, we need to start asking where you have done that CSR. Which section of the society got benefited by this. So I think we'll have to slightly break it down further so that the benefit can come to the education sector and the research. And a lot of things are happening at the society levels. I'll again give you the example of AICT, where they have come out with some activity points for the student. So a 4-year degree leads to a degree in BTech or BE, right? So if these students do these activity points, which will come to somewhere, I think 20 kids or so, a student will get an honors degree. So this is right. This is, I'm not talking about NEP. This, I'm talking about what AICT has come out with an initiative, and these activity points can be accumulated by working for the industry, by working for the society, going to the rural areas and doing certain projects over there. So what I believe in, initiatives have been taken. So there is an intent. We see that intent is very clearly visible. The only thing is, how do we synergize the
Yeah.
efforts? So
Yeah.
I put that at the table.
No, I think it's true that we have the different people have to play their part. Absolutely. So I think everybody is stepping up the game with the research framework also coming in with the NEP. It should add as well. I think if you look at the number of people the industries are trying to add, like Professor said, it should not be only in software. The humanities that Taslim talked about is a very key aspect of a well-rounded society, to be frank. And I think empathy doesn't come in any other way than being a good human being first. So I think with that, I would like to thank each of you. I wish we had more time. There were quite a few things that I learned today. Thank you, Taslim. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Dr. Mishra. And I hand it over back to Vishu and thanking Tech Bharat as well.
Let us thank you too, sir, for
Thank
the
you so much, sir.
fine coordination and with a very fine sense of calibration of the thoughts and then regulating it so smoothly for us to maximize the time out. I didn't realize that 1.5 hours went like this. So
Correct.
I think it's a
Thank
hallmark.
you.
I completely go. I completely go.
Thank
I
you, Taslim.
completely echo. Thank you so much for doing that, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushik. I mean, he's been a great support at Tech Bharat and he's completely behind us in all our endeavors. Once again, I thank all the panelists. Thank you so much for taking time out in spite of your busy schedule and being part of it. I think there are some very key takeaways, tangible takeaways for the audience, and I'm sure they'll find value in it. Uh, Thank you so much. We wish you the very best and seek your continued support for Tech Bharat.